Hey everybody, it's Mr. Mazzoro, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about flowers. Flowers are basically the greatest stage of evolutionary reproduction that has ever happened on Earth. Flowering plants, like I've told you before, are the most diverse group of plants of any organism that have ever lived on Earth. Period. There's more different types of flowering plants today than there has ever been of different types of beetles or bacteria or insects or dinosaurs or humans or anything. And that's because of flowers and how they work and how they're specialized in assuring different types of reproduction, be it sexual or asexual. And once you understand how a flower works, then we're going to talk about how plants use their flowers to attract their pollinators. So we're going to start talking about different types of flowers, and then different parts of flowers, and then finally we'll finish up by talking about how different flowers work. Flowers can be complete and they can be incomplete. A complete flower has all four parts, or what's otherwise known as whorls. And these parts are sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. If you look at this flower, it has sepals down here, petals, stamens, that's those yellow things, and a carpel right in the middle. So this hibiscus flower would be considered a complete flower because it has all four parts. An incomplete flower, like this plumeria, lacks one or more whorls. If you compare these two, you'll note that plumeria is missing all the stuff in the middle. Or at least it appears as though they're missing all the stuff in the middle. So, incomplete. Complete versus incomplete. And those whorls, what I mean by whorls, is literally whorls. Think of it like circles. Picture a flower like a dartboard. The outermost whorl is the sepal. That's these green things. And then you get on this particular flower the purple petals, the yellow stamens, and then the bullseye would be the carpel. The stamens are the male part and the carpel is the female part. So if a incomplete flower were to be lacking carpels, only has stamens, it doesn't have any female parts, so it would be a male flower. If a incomplete flower has only carpels and lacks stamens, has only the centermost part and lacks the pollen-producing parts on the outside, the sperm-producing parts, that would be a female flower. And that's how you get male and female plants. Plants that produce incomplete flowers with only carpels, female, or only stamens, male. If you begin thinking about flowers like a dartboard, then you begin thinking about them in terms of if they have all four rings, a complete flower, or missing one or more rings, incomplete flower. So, what are those four parts of the flowers and what they do? Here's a fuchsia flower, and conveniently, fuchsia flowers are really good for doing this particular exercise because all four parts of the flowers are different colors. So, what are the four parts of a flower? First, sepals. Sepals are the fuchsia part on the very, very outside. They look like petals, but they're actually much tougher, and they surrounded the bud. They protect the flower. If the flower is a reproductive organ of a plant, picture the sepals as the skin that surrounds your reproductive organs, protecting them. If you didn't have skin surrounding your reproductive organs, they would just hang out of your body, be very, very vulnerable, and it would hurt a lot. So we need skin. Flowers need sepals. The innermost whorl to that is the petals, in this case, the bluish purple parts. These are delicate, brightly colored parts of a flower that are there to attract pollinators. Stamens come after that. They're the next innermost whorl. That's these guys. And that's the sperm-producing part, or the male part of the flower. The very center whorl of a flower is the carpel, these yellow things sticking out of the middle. And that's the part of the flower that receives pollen. That's the female part of the flower. Sepals, petals, stamens, carpels. 1, 2, 3, 4 fuchsia flowers are complete flowers. So what's the process of flowering? How do flowers work? Well, first you get the sepals surrounding a bud, an immature flower, until it's ready to bloom. Those sepals protect that bud. They seal in the petals, make sure that no wind blows or they don't get too hot and fall off, because then the flower won't be able to attract pollinators and pollen might not be spread. When the bud blooms into a flower, animals are attracted to the petals or a variety of other parts of the flower, either smell, maybe even taste. And when they get to the flower, because they're attracted to it, they probably get some pollen on them, which is effectively plant sperm. And then what other animal or however that pollen is transferred from one flower to another, as long as it's transferred from the stamen of one flower to the carpels of another, stamen of one flower to the carpel of another, that's how you get fertilization. So that's it. That's kind of a short lesson of different types of flowers, complete and incomplete. Complete have all four whorls. Incomplete lack one or more whorls. There are different parts of the flowers. The four whorls are sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. Sepals protect, petals attract. Stamens are the male part, produce sperm. For the carpels, which are the female part, which accept the sperm in order to sexually or asexually reproduce if it's self-pollination. And the whole process is the sepals protect the bud, the flower blooms, the petals attract a pollinator, the pollinator rubs against the stamen, gets some of the pollen or sperm on it, himself or herself, and then transfers that pollen to another flower or flower on the same plant, and specifically the carpels of another flower or the flower on the same plant. So that's it for today in terms of how flowers work. Next time, what I want to talk to you about is actually probably the most interesting part of flowering plant reproduction, this idea of coevolution, this idea that really flowers can't move around, plants can't move around. So because they can't move around, they've had to spend their entire evolutionary history being very, very sly about attracting the animals which can move around to help them move their pollen for them, to help them move their sperm for them. Remember, this came way late in terms of plant evolutionary history. Really, only the last 100 million years did flowers start using flying insects or birds or mammals even after the dinosaurs died off 72 million years ago in order to transfer pollen and transfer their pollen for them. And tomorrow, or in the next lesson, that's what we're going to learn how to do, is we're going to learn how to look at a flower and understand how that flower is trying to manipulate animals into doing that job, pollination.